first, we have some important news from 100 Thieves and Schalke. A lot of people have been getting riled up on Twitter, on social media recently about the new European Super League for soccer that is threatening to come in. People are saying it's going to be the death of the soccer clubs in Europe, the small ones especially. But thanks to the generosity of American businesses like 100 Thieves, paying an alleged $1 million buyout to Schalke 04 that we already know is in financial trouble, America is doing its part in order to make sure that European small market teams can continue. You're welcome, Europeans. Super League is still a very good idea, and we should do it in LoL. That aside, Thor, what were your takes on the Abbedagge signing? Because a lot of people were thinking Niski was going to come in, but this came out of left field. Not to me, I knew it was going to happen, but to many people.
Put it this way, the person I actually feel saddest for this whole mess is going to come out in left field for most people. Is actually Dylan Falco, who we had on this show not that long ago, basically. And the reason why is very simple, is he's stuck in that position in his career right now. We're obviously lucky he had the big gigs in the past, that he had his gig at Immortals years ago and he had his gig at Fnatic, etc. But because at the moment he's stuck in what effectively should be a mid-table team, and if anything, he's actually managed to elevate them the last couple of splits to be maybe slightly overperforming. He's in the spot that I always call the nightmare spot in esports, which is you always have to work with nothing. Like, you never get like a fucking, like, you know, like a first ballot Hall of Fame guaranteed lock player come through your doors. You have to work with some motherfucker like Abbedagge who's never made it. You have to take some players, like in his case, he had to keep shuffling the bot lane and the junglers and keep going till he got the right mix. And he had one good vet, Odoamne, who left the first chance he got to a much better team, Rogue, that had the finances to potentially make him a contender. And so when you finally get another player online that they're looking good again, off they go and you have to start all over again, because put it this way, that €1 million isn't going to go into his like budget to buy a player now. It's not like he's now going to get an even better player. If anything, he's gambling on the RLs again. So I actually feel sorry just in terms of like the Schalke players and the staff for the fact that they're in a position where you're fucked either way. If you succeed, the player just leaves. If you don't succeed, you're stuck with bad players. So I feel bad for them in that scenario. As a club, people, presumably hence Monty's joke, people already knew from the off-season when they made all that stupid furore about like, we don't want to sell, but we will have to sell, but we wouldn't want, like, listen, mate, I know what NLP is, and this isn't even the fucking tutorial. Like, this is garbage. Like, you just clearly don't have the money, so we get it that the Schalke is not in a great spot. By the way, I will just say, when all you dickheads on Reddit who were experts about business, like, there's nothing, by the way, better than that meme of like, and over to the comments for the expert. The only time that I always like that is for business, because for business, none of you know anything, literally nothing. You just go for what you think. So what's mad is, right, I'm told all the time that the best thing for esports is for sports teams to come in. It's not, of course, because the sports teams don't give a flying fuck about esports. One person who's never at the top of their hierarchy convinced them, like, this is not a bad side hustle for marketing purposes. So they do it, and guess what? The second that they run into any financial problems, they're going to bullet the esports project, you morons. So even better if they go and buy a real endemic team. All you're saying is, I hope in the future that this real endemic team doesn't exist anymore. That's what happens.
I also think it's funny that in a world where we see such insane growth in LEC, in fact, the finals this year had more viewership than Fnatic and G2 finals previously. So we've seen growth even among teams that aren't the top teams. Obviously, Schalke has been on the rise kind of year over year. Meanwhile, your garbage soccer team is in relegation or whatever in Germany. And the decision you're making is, yes, let's keep our soccer team trending downwards and not our League of Legends team in a market that's shooting up, that has increased popularity and increased results from our League of Legends team. Not maybe the cut I would make. Let's put it that way. In the long run of the asset, you know.
You know the new term that people need to figure out, because I know everyone tries to memorize the buzzwords in lieu of actually knowing anything about business. Here's the buzzword you all need to learn. It's called complementary business. Because I'm getting really sick, Monty, of people bragging about businesses that aren't complementary. Like, for example, you know when they comment all the time publicly, people like, and of course, companies like TSM are turning a profit in esports, right? How would it ever make sense to brag that I own like a steel mill where I'm just taking steel out, I'm taking metal out of the earth and I'm working it, I'm turning it into materials, and on the side, right, I just have a business where I badly run an Italian restaurant and lose all my money? Like, why would I brag about that? Why would I go, well, the Italian restaurant does lose money, but I make loads of the steel mill. Well, then stop fucking doing the Italian restaurant, you daft cunt. Do you not like the money? Because what's mad is, right, Monty, if they're bragging that the guides make them all that money in the Blitz app, well, what the fuck does that have to do with Uni? How does that affect Uni playing playing in their team. It doesn't. It just means that what you're saying is Reginald's really good in the part of the business he's not directly involved in on the day-to-day. No shit, who's he? The fucking guy who runs the Knicks or whatever. Like, yeah, we know when you're not in the room, mate. It goes awesome. But unfortunately, the ones where you're in the room, you fuck it up, don't you? So no, anyway, and on the actual like thing, the 100 Thieves side, it's a pretty good pivot for them. I mean, I know people now will just complain about the amount they spent and whatnot, but listen, when you looked at that team, it's like I said the whole time, that team couldn't be it with DeMonte or with Ryoma. Like, that wasn't going to be the T, as the kids say. You were never going to win LCS. You were definitely never going to do anything internationally. But you know what? You look at this lineup now with Abbedagge in the team, now that someday has like the residency, that's a pretty good lineup now, actually. Like, first of all, immediately that team should be a contender for summer. And who knows? They could potentially go to Worlds.
Yeah, I think definitely the expectation has to be that they go to Worlds, because they should be at least significantly better than TSM now. Because remember, in the series that they played against TSM, their problem was closing out their games. They were getting
they had all the drafts,
early,
yeah, it was hilarious,
tons of early leads. Like, they were, I mean, Papa Smithy, I was talking to him about it. He was not pleased when I mentioned this, but I said, like, I've never seen a game or a best of 5 in League where one team is up 4 games in a row and then loses 3-1. But I think that's a fixable problem, and certainly to his credit. And we can talk about the Reapered switch too, because Reapered, they let go of Ziggs as their coach. They're bringing in Reapered. It's also important to mention, just to roll back a little bit, the situation that caused Abbedagge to kind of be free for 100 Thieves to buy out, because his contract was expiring at the end of this year, and all indications point to the fact that he would have probably left the roster anyway. So if you're a Schalke fan and you're frustrated by this, I think, you know, he was going to go to NA or maybe Fnatic or wherever, probably a bigger name team, because he's had very strong individual performances, I would say. And so he was going to become a hot prospect. So if you're Schalke, why not get money now for a buyout rather than just let him enter free agency, right? So it makes sense for them to kind of unload him at the current point in time, especially considering, like you mentioned, Thorin, what we know about the financial state that they have publicly said about the team. So that said, there was also Niski, which was potentially an interesting pickup, especially because he and Closer both speak Turkish and are good friends. But you know what's interesting about Abbedagge is that he played on a team called Royal Bandits with Closer in Turkey in 2018. And not only that, Freeze, who is currently 100 Thieves coach, was also on that roster.
I'm sure this is all connected. I'm sure you've had some input, you know, etc.
Yeah. So considering
it's also, by the way, if people think about what the complaint this last split was about, it was all about like, but we must have Ryoma because he's the mage player. Listen, Abbedagge is a fucking mage player. That's exactly what he does in his game. So it also fits what they need.
Yeah. And also, here's the other thing. Broken Blade was the top laner of that roster too. So, you know, he had played previously with Broken Blade on this Royal Bandits. Amazing how many kind of players that were able to come out of this. But it is in many ways a reunion of Closer and Freeze over on 100 Thieves, which I think made it probably an attractive destination. And if you're a 100 Thieves fan, you should probably be pretty excited about this, because you're not starting at zero synergy between mid and jungle, right? These guys have played together. They have that experience. Yes, it was a couple of years ago, but at least you're not starting from square one. So I think in terms of this too, if you look at the available options, so if Niski was indeed an option, if Fnatic was willing to deal him, we don't know about that. There were just rumors. So I think if I had to pick between Abbedagge and Niski, I probably would have taken Abbedagge, just because I think he has a higher ceiling and more versatility, even though Niski seems like a stylistically pretty good match for 100 Thieves. I think either would have been a good option. What do you think?
The problem is this, right? This is why on the one hand, I like comparisons, but I seem to be the only one who knows what metaphor and analogies are, because other people, this is how you know literalism has just ruined people's brains, Monty. In the same way as people get offended when you compare two things, right? People themselves will compare two things and act like they just are a one-to-one match. So when we compared Niski to Doinby, dude, I think people actually believe that's like for real. I just mean like it's the closest stylistic explanation for why a mid laner would play for his his jungler. In terms of actual game, like, I hope people don't actually think Doinby's an actual meme. Like, it's funny, his narrative, but he is actually a genius about League of Legends. I hope people watched fucking FPX in the playoffs understand this. Like, the guy, and by the way, he definitely does not have non-existent mechanics. He just doesn't have god-tier mechanics.
His Oriana game in the finals is superb.
So my problem is this, right? The reason why I'm making this distinction is here's the difference. As you've already seen, you can actually have Doinby and not only win the LPL, but Worlds. You can win anything with him. I don't think, unfortunately, you can win, like, much with Nisqy. Like, I think you can be a decent LCS team, but I don't think you're ever going to do, like, massive things. Like, he might be helping his team, but Doinby is his team. The joke is Doinby is the StarCraft player, and they're just the fucking units, aren't they? Like, that's, like, did anyone even, we'll talk about it with Nelson, that entire style they even use now is genius, where they just load one side of the map and just tell the other guy, just fucking calm down for 5 minutes. Like, it works. Like, they have a whole style that just works. Nisqy isn't bringing that. He's just a guy who he's just a guy who's the sacrificial mid laner and knows how to roam to the other lanes. Like, so to me, I think people have like conflated the two a little bit too closely there. Like, I don't think he's like an automatic winner in the way Doinby is. So of the two, I'd rather have Abbedagge. I think Abbedagge still hasn't proven that much. Like, obviously hasn't done much internationally yet. We've only seen a few playoff runs, but like the raw skills seem to be there. And then when I look at the LCS, I think mid lane at LCS isn't that hot at the moment. So I think he has a chance to be one of the absolute best players. Like, this is, bearing in mind how influential position is, if he does well, he will be an MVP candidate essentially.
Yeah, I think absolutely that's true. And to me, these moves really put 100 Thieves right in contention for being potentially a title holder, right? And I think that when you look at the coaching change, I also agree with this coaching change for a few reasons. I think that we didn't see a lot of development out of the roster. I think one of the big complaints with 100 Thieves was that they were pretty static from the lock-in tournament all the way through the end of their run in the spring playoffs or whatever, mid-season showdown, these terrible names that they come up with that all sound the same.
I don't we never even addressed that, Monty. That's how stupid Riot is, that they want to openly signal to everyone in 2021 they're still treating LCS as the flagship project, while all the other world wins all the world championships and even Europe's more than fun. They're still going to, so even though every other region is just called the LPL playoffs, or no, America is like very closely tied to the branding of the very important like number one seat. Like, I mean, America will never win. Like, what even is this, Riot? What are you? You are fucking meme, aren't you?
I also just don't like the name Mid-Season Invitational because it's boring and doesn't sound very prestigious, right? Like Invitational does, but mid-season just makes it sound so anticlimactic.
Dude,
right?
Invitational is probably the stupidest part of it. Why do Riot insist on doing things where they don't even literally understand the words they're... like, League Championship Series isn't a series, it's a league. They meant League of Legends. It's not even a series. Then you go for mid-season invitational. It's not an invitational. You win automatically by winning your region. They can't uninvite you. You're number one. So invitational would be, by the way, like if Dan1 didn't win LCK and they were like, we choose to invite Dan1 anyway. No, whoever wins LCK gets to go. Like people who name these, it's like someone just told them invitational sounds classy and prestigious, and they just named it that for no reason. So I don't get it myself, Monty. I don't get it at all.
I also just get tilted from like an English language perspective when they do things like use acronyms to create more acronyms, because remember LCS stands for League of Legends Championship Series, so they shortened the League of Legends into its own acronym. It's just meta English right there with so many like
it's
layers.
Like YOLO once or whatever. That's what people say. Yeah,
I'm just caught in some sort of postmodern nightmare when I look at the names. It's not my favorite. I'll say that.
I do appreciate though, by the way, as you alluded to earlier, the best part about this news, if you really think through all the perspectives and how it might change things, is that even though TSM isn't in this story at all, they're not a team dealing a player, they're not a team signing a player. The joke is the ultimate end goal is like TSM does lose a spot. Like that's the joke. I was saying before, like maybe 3 weeks ago, Monty, the sad thing about playoffs was there's no way 100 Thieves and Dig, etc. were going to beat TSM. So probably they do just get the third spot and just get to go to Worlds anyway. The joke now is they don't. Like now there's going to be very hot competition for that last spot. And that's if no one else even makes any other moves. Like, by the way, God forbid, like definitely ever actually hits like a few months worth of form, or there might actually be an interesting playoffs next time around. Like all of a sudden it's actually gotten pretty interesting. That's how bad TSM's done in general. Like someone does one move and you're just out already.
Well, they did do two moves. So let's talk about Reapered as well, because I alluded to this before. I think their progression was pretty flat, and especially with this roster, you would have expected them to improve. Now, Someday didn't have the greatest performance, definitely true in the spring split. Perhaps this will reinvigorate or motivate him, having Abbedagge in the team. Certainly, it will relieve some pressure from the top lane because there's going to be an actual source of pressure in the mid lane that teams are going to have to be concerned about, and that also will allow I think the rest of the team a little bit more wiggle room in terms of where they are getting their carry performances from, and dimensionalizes their style in many ways. So that said, Reapered comes in. So Reapered, for those of you who don't know, has been in Los Angeles this entire time since he left Cloud9. And so
was he just doing nothing, just chilling, doing nothing? Or was he working with someone?
He was not.
I know a lot of those.
He's not working with. He wasn't working
people
with...
don't know, nowadays, like some of those coaches will go and do sort of like assistant coaching, but they don't make it public and stuff behind the scenes nowadays, don't they? Like there's a lot of people get work somehow.
Yeah, he might have been, but I do not think so. Okay. I could be wrong on that. I do know that he was talking to some teams from around the world about various positions, but I think probably he probably wanted a break after all those years of coaching, back to back. And I think for him, this is a really great opportunity because basically he gets to swoop in with a roster that is going to be significantly better. And, you'd have to say that this is definitely a favorite to make Worlds, this new 100 Thief roster at the current point in time. So it seems like a pretty easy job for him. And I think Reapered has done with Cloud9 in the past. We can debate his drafts, the playoff performances of some of these teams. When I was working with Cloud9 and doing interviews with him that were aired publicly, he said that he had really lost motivation at the Worlds in 2019. And so he took a lot of responsibility for the collapse of that roster at Worlds that year. And I think maybe he was a little bit burnt out. So he has been pretty public with a lot of what he feels were his personal mistakes or not living up to that reputation. But I think with a break now, and I think the fact that he can, I think, push the team harder than Zix can. And I think that his personality and his more aggressive tendencies are probably more in line with what the 100 Thieves roster requires to take them to the next level.
The problem is with Reapered is like this. It's not even that his drafts was stupid. Like, I'm not saying that he did drafts that were, like, objectively bad and there's no logic to it. Like, I'm not doing that at all. My problem with this was, like, he literally... It's one of the reasons why you should be careful, like, which pro players you want to become coaches. Because in the same way as, like, the obvious example people always give is you wouldn't want, like, some superstar athlete in a team sport to be the coach, because odds are he won't understand things like how do you sacrifice for the team, how do you help another player get enabled, because he's never done any of those things. He was just having those done to him.
Is this an indictment of Bjergsen?
No, I mean, it's one of the obvious reasons why I personally didn't think Bjergsen would be some straight fire coach and be Godzilla like every other idiot did, who I noticed has just gone mad silent about the whole playoffs. They just never mentioned Bjergsen. He just didn't exist during the playoffs, Monty. That's how genius this guy's career is. His whole playing career is that he doesn't have any help when he's just a person not helping. Just don't bother mentioning him. No, but the thing with Reapered is this. To me, the reason why I nailed super early that like Reapered was going to continually do the 200 IQ drafts and fuck the team is one of the other problems is this. It's very different being a leader and a shot caller, given the plan, when you also then are the guy who then enforces that it gets activated. Like, you're in the server doing that plan. Like, the whole point is, when you're the shot caller and a leader like that, you manage the plan and you make sure people are still on track. And it doesn't matter if 20 minutes into a game someone forgets what the win condition, you're there to remind them. His problem was he was like setting all the pieces, going for one of those, I forget the name of it, you'll know what it is. What the name of those machines where, like, you know, a ball drops off like a fucking, like a fucking diving board and it lands in some beans that go into an egg and then an egg goes.
I'm blanking on it.
It's like a famous name for a type of machine. Everyone knows it. Everyone's seen it on YouTube. It's like he was trying to set one of those up like that, but then he wasn't, because he wasn't
contraption. That's it.
Yeah,
sorry.
But then his problem is he wanted it to be like that, where he only had to press the button at the beginning and it all went perfectly. It's like, as we all know from everyone who's tried to ever debate LS, it's not going to go flawlessly at that. So in my opinion, he was an example of someone where it's like his draft was trying to show me that he's a genius about the game. And I'm like, well, I agree, but your team can't do that, what you're telling them though. But he was just like, he wanted his bonus points for doing that. Sometimes in the game, I've said this many times, just the simple draft that works is the right draft. You don't have to show everyone you're a genius, mate. Just do the simple draft that lets you win the game. So, to me, that's why I'm interested to see what he'll do with this lineup, because there's so many moving parts to this lineup. Some of these players have done fuck all historically. It's not like these are all like proven winners. That I'm very interested to see whether he can actually make this team a no champion or not.
I'm curious what happens with Someday too when he has a Korean coach and especially a former professional top laner as well. Because if there's a way to potentially reinvigorate Someday, that might be the key to doing it, right? Where you have a coach that is intimately familiar with that position, can speak directly in Korean to each other. I think it might be a big help if you're trying to turn Someday around. But Someday, I think, can be motivated highly, I think, by the green card and this entire mid lane process. If I was Someday, I'd be feeling pretty good right now and ready to kick some ass in the summer. So
he's one of those players I don't worry about, mate. When you've played as long as he has and you've always come back to the top again, he's going to be good again in like 2 months or something, isn't he? Like it's just obvious.
Yeah.